Here's something strange about people who reach 100. When researchers sit down with them, they almost never describe a secret. No miracle food, no perfect supplement, no punishing routine they forced themselves through for decades. What shows up instead is a list of things they didn't do. Small things mostly. Habits they quietly avoided year after year without ever calling it a longevity plan. And when scientists compare long-lived groups across very different countries, the same absences keep appearing. Not in every person, not everywhere, and never as a promise, but often enough that they're worth a serious look. So today we're flipping the usual question. Instead of asking what centenarians do, we're asking what they tend to skip, because sometimes the clearest pattern isn't in what people add to their lives, it's in what they leave out. Let's be honest about what's really at stake here. Most people don't just want more birthdays, they want to stay strong, clear-headed, and independent for as long as possible. There's a big difference between living to 90 and living well at 90. Researchers call that gap the difference between lifespan and health span. Lifespan is how long you live. Health span is how long you stay functional, mobile, and sharp. And that second number is the one that shapes your daily life. Here's why avoidance is interesting to scientists. It's often easier to spot a harmful pattern than to prove a helpful one. When a behavior keeps showing up less frequently in people who age well, that's a clue worth following. But it comes with a warning label. People who live past 100 are survivors. They made it through wars, illnesses, and decades of risk that took others out along the way. That survival can distort the picture. Maybe they avoided certain things because they were already healthier, not the other way around. So as we go through this list, keep one idea in mind. We're looking at patterns, not guarantees. Tendencies, not rules. Things that show up often in long-lived people, which may or may not be the reason they got there. That honesty is the whole point of this channel. Number 1, they never sit still all day. Picture a 98-year-old in a village in Sardinia. She's not doing squats in a gym. She's walking to the market, tending a small garden, climbing the stairs in her home, carrying things by hand. Movement is baked into her day, not scheduled into it. This pattern shows up again and again in long-lived communities. It isn't intense exercise. It's the near total absence of long, unbroken sitting. Modern research on sedentary behavior finds that long stretches of sitting are linked with worse health outcomes, somewhat independent of whether you exercise. The proposed reason is simple enough to picture. Muscles that stay still all day burn less fuel and send fewer helpful signals through the body. Now, most of this evidence is observational, meaning it spots associations rather than proving cause. But the takeaway is gentle and low risk. You don't need a marathon. You need to interrupt the sitting. And that idea carries into the next habit, which looks even smaller. Number 2, they never eat until they're stuffed. In Okinawa, older residents have long described a practice sometimes translated as eating until you're about 80% full. They stop before fullness, not after it. It's a cultural habit passed down and repeated at the table, not a diet anyone follows with an app. Why might this matter? Eating slightly less than complete fullness naturally moderates how many calories you take in over time, and it's gentler on the body's daily workload. Animal studies on calorie restriction have shown longer lifespans in some species, though translating that to humans is genuinely uncertain, and long-term human trials are limited. So it's fair to call this a promising pattern, not a proven formula. And here's the honest nuance. This kind of mild restraint can be risky for older adults who are frail, underweight, or managing certain conditions. For a healthy person, leaving a little room at the end of a meal is a small, reasonable habit. For someone fragile, it's a conversation with a clinician, not a rule from a video. Number 3, they never let themselves become isolated. Look closely at long-lived people, and you'll notice something they rarely do. They rarely spend their days alone. There's usually a small, steady web around them. A neighbor who checks in, family nearby, a regular gathering, a shared meal, a routine visit. It's not a huge social circle. It's a reliable one. This may be one of the better supported patterns on the list. Large reviews have linked strong social connection with lower risk of early death on a scale researchers compare to other major health factors. The proposed mechanisms include lower chronic stress, more support during illness, and simply having reasons to keep moving and engaging. Still, we can't fully rule out that healthier people are more social to begin with. But given how low the downside is, Staying connected is one of the safest bets in the whole field of aging, and it connects directly to the next one. Number 4, they never fully retire from purpose. Many centenarians never stop having a reason to get up in the morning. In Okinawa, it's sometimes called ikigai. In Costa Rica, a similar idea appears under a different name. The specific word matters less than the pattern. There's a role, a task, someone who needs them, or a small duty that structures the day. Purpose has been studied more than you might expect, and several observational studies link a stronger sense of meaning with better health and lower mortality risk. The proposed reasons are practical, not mystical. Purpose gets people out of bed, keeps them moving, and gives structure that supports sleep, meals, and connection. It's worth being careful here. This is association, and meaning is hard to measure. But notice how it overlaps with movement and connection. That overlap is a theme we'll come back to. Purpose isn't a separate hack. It's often the thing that quietly organizes everything else. Number 5, they never chase extreme diets. Here's something that might surprise you. Long-lived populations are not famous for dramatic diets. They're famous for boring, steady ones. Mostly plants, simple preparations, modest portions, familiar foods eaten at regular times. Nobody's cycling through a new eating trend every few months. What the research on dietary patterns tends to favor isn't a single magic food, it's the overall shape of the diet repeated for decades. Patterns rich in vegetables, beans, whole grains, and less heavily processed food are associated with better long-term outcomes in many studies. The key word is pattern. One superfood won't override an otherwise chaotic diet, and no single ingredient earns the credit. And there's a hidden advantage to eating simply. It's sustainable. Extreme diets tend to collapse. A plain, repeatable way of eating can quietly run for 50 years. That consistency may matter more than any individual food on the plate. Number 6, they never treat sleep as optional. You won't find many centenarians who bragged about running on 4 hours of sleep. Long-lived routines tend to include regular rest, often anchored by natural light and predictable daily rhythms. They sleep, they wake, and the timing stays fairly consistent. Sleep research links both very short and very disrupted sleep with a range of poorer health outcomes. During sleep, the body handles repair, memory processing, and hormone regulation, so chronic shortfalls tend to add up. Most of this is observational, and sleep needs vary from person to person, so there's no single perfect number. But the pattern among people who age well isn't heroic sleep. It's unremarkable, steady sleep. And notice how it links back to earlier habits. Daily movement, sunlight, regular meals, and social rhythm all tend to support better sleep. The pieces keep reinforcing each other, which is exactly why single habit thinking falls short. Number 7, they never let stress run nonstop. No one lives 100 years without hardship, war, loss, poverty, illness. What's notable isn't that long-lived people avoided stress. It's that many of them had built-in ways to release it. A daily walk, prayer or quiet time, naps, gathering with others, small rituals that interrupted the pressure before it became constant. Chronic, unrelieved stress is associated with a range of health problems, likely through long-term effects on the heart, immune function, and sleep. The important word is chronic. Short bursts of stress are normal and even useful. It's the never-ending kind that seems to wear the body down. We should be cautious because stress is hard to measure and easy to oversimplify, but the habit here is realistic, not a stress-free life, which doesn't exist. Just reliable ways to come back down. That's something almost anyone can build, regardless of age or income. Number 8, they never stop using their legs. Watch how independent older people move, and you'll notice their legs are still working hard. They stand up from chairs without pushing off. They climb stairs. They squat down to the garden and get back up. Lower body strength is one of the quiet dividing lines between staying independent and losing it. There's a name for age-related muscle loss. It's called sarcopenia, the gradual decline in muscle mass and strength that comes with aging. Research links stronger legs and better balance with a lower risk of falls and a greater ability to live independently. Falls are a major threat to older adults, so this isn't a small thing. The encouraging part is that strength responds to use at almost any age, but safety matters. Anyone with balance problems, heart conditions, or fall risk should get guidance before starting something new, rather than testing risky movements alone. Keep the legs working carefully, and you protect the freedom to move at all. Number 9, they never build their meals around processed food. In most long-lived communities, heavily processed packaged food simply wasn't the foundation of the diet, especially for the generations now reaching very old age. They ate what was grown, cooked at home, and eaten fresh. Processed snacks and sugary drinks were occasional, not central. A growing body of research associates diets high in ultra-processed foods with worse health outcomes, though much of it is observational and the category is broad. The likely issue isn't one villain ingredient. It's the overall combination of heavy processing, added sugar, refined starch, and easy overeating. Here's the important nuance, though. This isn't about labeling any single food as poison. It's about what makes up the bulk of the diet over decades. An occasional treat isn't the problem. The problem is when processed food becomes the base instead of the exception. Frequency and proportion are the whole story here, not fear of one ingredient. Number 10. They never define themselves by their age. There's an attitude that shows up often in people who age well, and it's easy to miss. They don't treat old age as the end of usefulness. They keep learning, helping, contributing, and engaging with the world as participants, not spectators. Their age is a number, not an identity. Interestingly, research on attitudes toward aging has found associations between more positive views of getting older and better health outcomes, including how people recover and function. The proposed explanation is behavioral. People who don't write themselves off tend to stay active, social, and engaged, which feeds back into physical health. This is association, and mindset is genuinely hard to study, so we hold it loosely. But the practical version is refreshing. Staying curious and involved isn't just good for the spirit. It may quietly support the habits that keep the body working. Attitude and behavior are hard to separate, and that's kind of the point. Number 11. They never abandon their daily structure. One of the least glamorous patterns is also one of the most consistent. Long-lived people tend to have structure, meals at similar times, a predictable rhythm to the day, regular movement, regular rest, regular contact with others. It's not rigid, but it's steady. Why might structure matter so much? Because it removes the need for constant willpower. When good behaviors are built into a routine, you don't have to decide to do them every day. They just happen. Consistent daily rhythms may also support sleep and appetite through the body's internal clock. This is less about a single study and more about how all the other habits get sustained over decades. And that's the real advantage. A person relying on motivation eventually runs out of it. A person relying on routine keeps going almost automatically. Structure is what turns a good habit into a 50-year habit, which is the timescale that actually matters here. Number 12. They never stop moving after meals. Here's a small one that ties the whole list together. In many long-lived communities, sitting down and staying still after eating isn't the norm. People get up, they walk to a neighbor's, tend to a chore, or stroll a bit. Movement after meals is woven into ordinary life. Some research suggests that light activity, like a gentle walk after eating, is associated with steadier blood sugar responses compared with sitting. The proposed reason is that working muscles help pull sugar from the blood. Most of these studies are small and short-term, so we shouldn't oversell them, but it's a beautifully low-risk habit. A short, easy walk after a meal asks almost nothing and fits into daily life without effort. And notice how it quietly bundles several patterns at once. Movement, routine, often connection if you walk with someone. That bundling is exactly what we need to talk about next. Step back and look at all 12 together and something clicks. These aren't 12 separate tricks. They're pieces of one system that reinforce each other. Daily movement supports better sleep. Better sleep supports mood and appetite. Social connection creates reasons to move and eat well. Purpose organizes the whole day. Structure makes every good habit run on autopilot instead of willpower. That's the real pattern, not perfection, regularity. None of these people were flawless. Some smoked, some drank, some lived hard lives with little medical care. What they tended to share wasn't discipline in the gym sense. It was a way of living where movement, connection, moderation, and purpose were simply normal, day after day, decade after decade. And here's the quiet insight most people miss. Long-lived communities often make the healthy choice the easy choice. When your food is grown nearby, your friends are close, your errands require walking, and your day has natural rhythm, you don't have to fight yourself constantly. The environment does a lot of the work. That's very different from white-knuckling a strict plan through sheer effort. It suggests that the goal isn't more willpower. It's building a life where good habits happen almost by default. That reframing changes everything about how you'd actually apply any of this. Let's be straight about the strength of the evidence because it varies a lot across this list. The strongest support is probably for social connection and for physical activity. Both have been studied extensively across many populations, with fairly consistent findings linking them to better health and longer life. Sleep sits in a similar zone. Very short or disrupted sleep is repeatedly associated with poorer outcomes. The dietary patterns matter too, but here we lean heavily on observational studies, meaning research that spots associations without proving cause. That's a real limitation. People who eat well often differ in many other ways, and untangling food from everything else is genuinely hard. Ideas like mild eating moderation draw partly on animal research, which doesn't always translate to humans, so we hold those more loosely. Then there's the deepest challenge of all. Studying centenarians is difficult. There aren't many of them. Historical birth records can be unreliable, and you can't run a controlled experiment across 100 years of someone's life. That's why so much of this stays at the level of pattern rather than proof. And there's the survivor problem again. When you study people who already reached 100, you're studying a selected group who beat long odds. Their habits might have helped them get there, or their underlying resilience might explain both their habits and their survival. Often we can't fully separate the two. So the honest bottom line is this. Some of these patterns have solid support, some are plausible but uncertain, and none should be treated as a personal guarantee. That uncertainty isn't a weakness in the science, it's just the truth about a very hard question. The biggest mistake people make is copying a single detail and ignoring the whole system. They hear that Okinawans eat a certain food and rush to buy it, while skipping the movement, the connection, the structure, and the moderation that surrounded it. One ingredient lifted out of a whole way of living rarely does much on its own. Another common error is reaching for supplements before fixing the basics. People will chase a pill while sitting all day, sleeping poorly, and rarely seeing friends. The unglamorous foundations usually matter far more than anything in a bottle. Then there's the smoking centenarian trap. You've heard it. Someone's grandfather smoked and lived to 101. So how bad can it be? That's using one exceptional survivor to wave away well-established risk. Rare exceptions don't cancel the odds for everyone else. A single person is a story, not proof. People also confuse thinness with health. Imagine longevity requires perfect discipline, and forget how much genetics, income, safety, and access to care shape the whole picture. And many focus only on adding years while ignoring the part that actually determines quality of life, which is staying functional and independent. Getting these wrong doesn't just waste effort. It points people away from the things that genuinely seem to matter. So what does this list really tell us about aging well? It tells us that longevity, when it shows up, usually looks less like a breakthrough and more like an accumulation. Small, unremarkable choices repeated for so long that they stop feeling like choices at all. The through line isn't any single food, exercise, or trick. It's the way strength, movement, connection, purpose, and rhythm tend to hold each other up. Strong legs let you keep moving. Moving keeps you social and independent. Connection gives you reasons to keep going. Purpose organizes your day. And structure keeps the whole thing running without constant effort. Pull one thread and the others often loosen. Reinforce one and the others tend to follow. That's why chasing a single habit in isolation so often disappoints. The people who age well weren't optimizing one variable. They were living inside a system where good choices came easily, supported by their environment, their relationships, and their routines. For most of us, the realistic lesson isn't to imitate a village in Sardinia. It's to nudge our own lives in that direction. Make movement easier to do than to avoid. Keep people close. Build a rhythm, hold on to a reason to get up. Longevity may be the headline, but the deeper story is about function, freedom, and the quality of the years, not just the count. If you remember one thing, let it be this. The people who reach 100 in good shape didn't win a lottery of secrets. Most of them simply avoided the slow drift towards stillness, isolation, and chaos, and they did it for decades without calling it anything special. You don't need to copy all 12 of these perfectly. You don't need to be flawless. The pattern that seems most reliable across the whole field is almost embarrassingly simple. Keep moving, stay connected, eat simply and steadily, sleep, hold on to purpose, build a rhythm you can actually keep. Some of this has strong science behind it. Some is still uncertain, and we've been honest about which is which. But even if you never reach 100, these are the same habits that help you stay strong, clear, and independent along the way. And that, in the end, is the part worth caring about most. Longevity may be the headline. Function is the real story. If this helped you see longevity a little more clearly, you can like the video and subscribe to the 100-Year Life for more evidence-based stories about living longer, stronger, and better.